Good evening, Edison Township, and welcome to our Return to School Parent Forum. At this meeting, we're going to present our Return to School plan and our schedules for parents, as well as our school community. We have several board members here, Mrs. Shivi Madagor, Mrs. Elizabeth Conway, Mr. Jerry Shee, and Mrs. Carol Badovsky. We also have key members of our administrative team that I'd like to recognize at the beginning here. I can pull everybody up. We have Mrs. Beninda Mahabir. We got Mr. Ralph Barker, Mr. William Cullibas, and for some reason, that's the only people that I see right now. And Ms. Gail Polakowski, Dr. Chris Conkling, Mr. Patrick Kassan, Mr. Rich Benedict, and I think that's everyone that's at the meeting right now. So what I would like to do is go through our presentation for today's meeting, share with you our schedule and our expectations for returning to school in our hybrid model. We will then open it up to questions that were already submitted. And we had a number of parents as well as community members submit questions. Those questions will be read off with our answers, and we may defer to members of the administrative team. Once that has been completed, what we will then do is open this up to the forum of our board members as well as our administrators to dialogue and ask questions. So I thank you, and I appreciate your attention. First and foremost, what is our mission? And, these are trying times for all of us. And this is a situation to which, in my 32 years in education, we have not experienced before. So it's quite unique. But our key components are to ensure that we provide as safe and healthy environment as possible for our staff and our students, as along the same time, still providing a curriculum and an educational program to our students that is rigorous, while also catering to the emotional well-being of our staff and students in this most difficult time. It's quite a lofty mission, and it's one that we are going to try our best to make sure that we can achieve. Some of the goals here that I think are important to just go over at the onset. We want to prioritize the physical and social emotional health and well-being of our staff and students. I think that's critically important. Many people in today's day and age, since this pandemic began and really began to impact our community in March, have dealt with things in a variety of different ways and at different levels of success. And many people are feeling angst and anxiety, and then we have to address that as best as we can for staff, students, and our community members. Some of the things we'll talk a little bit more at length. We're going to use enhanced cleaning and screening protocols in all facilities. We're going to follow the social distancing protocols that many of you, that if you've gone out to your grocery stores or other places of business, have recognized that that's become common practice, as well as wearing and utilizing personal protective equipment that we now know by the acronym of PPE. We're going to do our best to provide meaningful instructional programs to our students via a remote setting, as well as those students that are in person. And we want to ensure that all of our students are equipped with a working device and internet connectivity. Some may remember that when we transitioned to totally remote learning last March, that was a heavy lift for us. And we tried to ensure that every student had a device as well as connectivity. And the Board of Education in the district still remains committed to that. And even at that time, we wound up providing hotspots and things like that for families who had connectivity issues. And we're still committed to doing that as we move forward. Okay, so the way it's set up right now, as you may or may not be aware, and most of you I would think are familiar with this, is the governor of our state has allowed parents the option, if they should choose to have their child educated totally remote, they have the option to do that. And if you've made that decision and you want to change it, we're giving parents the option up until Wednesday, which is August 12th, to make that change. And the reason we've extended that, because we initially said we didn't want anybody changing, and I'll explain that a little bit in a minute, was if they have a different perspective after hearing the presentation tonight, and they wish to choose a different option, we will afford parents that, the right to do that up until August 12th. The reason we don't want to change that after August 12th is schedules regarding in-person instruction are going to be developed, and we can't really change those once we have those parameters set in place because of the social distancing. We want to make sure the students are placed appropriately away from each other, where we can have a successful program and still provide for everybody's safety and well-being. So once the choice is made, and again, as I said, we're opening it up to August 12th, which is Wednesday. Remote students cannot return to in-person instruction until the end of the marking period. When we sent out our parent survey, we made that clear that if you were choosing the remote option, it was for the duration of the marking period. Again, because if then you decided to come in, it could sway the numbers and change our program for the in-person instruction. All right. Same thing with parents that waive transportation, those that are eligible for remote transportation. If you waive it, we're going to ask you to commit for that marking period, because if you waive transportation and either elect to transport your child yourself or choose the remote instruction option, any changes therein would change the routes kind of, mid-course of the marking period, which would be very difficult for us to do. Currently, this question has come up before regarding sports and extracurricular athletics. The NJSI AA, as well as the Greater Middlesex Conference, do allow currently for students that are on remote learning to participate in athletics. And if that doesn't change, that would remain intact as well as we begin the school year. We mentioned the survey before, and our student population in our community is approaching 17,000 students. I want to say we're about 16,900 students or so. I don't know that exact amount today, but the survey respondents that you can see on this slide here, we have almost that entire population. There were some duplicates and some answers that didn't correlate directly to student ID numbers, but this percentage has remained fairly consistent from when we first put out a survey a few weeks ago. If you can see the numbers there, approximately 72% of our families would opt for remote learning only, with approximately 28% of our families opting for in-person learning if possible. These are the numbers as they break down by school. And you can see some of the numbers there. We still have to contact some families. We will ensure that every family is contacted. This column over here shows the families we've yet to connect with. But the percentages have remained fairly consistent on those that want to come back to school in person and those that want to be totally remote. And we'll use these numbers as our guidance. Each building has a certain degree of capacity. Each classroom has a certain degree of capacity. And we want to ensure that if we're allowing children and staff members into a room, that we can appropriately social distance 6 feet away and still provide an educational environment that's conducive to learning while also adhering to the social distancing parameters. One of the things that we'd like to do is we have scheduled for October 22nd was a full day of in-service for teacher training. And we'd like to swap that day out for September 2nd. And the reason being, while we have many teachers that are participating in our online training and some of the things that we provided over the course of the summer, we've actually had hundreds of teachers participate in those endeavors. We'd like to have 2 full days to provide training for the start of this school year. As I said in the beginning, this is a start of a school year unlike any to which we've been accustomed. So rather than having that professional learning day on October 22nd, we're going to ask the Board of Education at our August 24th meeting to change the calendar to make September 1st the first day for teachers to return, and September 2nd a full day of in-service to provide the supports necessary for our students, for our teachers to be successful in meeting our students' needs. What that would mean would be the start of the school year for students would then go from September 3rd as opposed to September 2nd. Again, just to provide some additional support for our teaching staff. Okay, some of the school schedules I'm going to review at this point. Okay. I think everyone needs to be aware of this in the beginning. Um, as a school district, we surveyed our staff, we surveyed our parents, and our initial hope was this, that if we had a number of staff members who desired to be totally remote, a number of staff members who desired to come in and work in person. In the same way with students, we had a percentage, as you saw earlier, of students that wanted to be totally remote, and we had a percentage that wanted to come in into our, an in-person environment. We were hoping we'd be able to try to accommodate both of those and provide those options for everybody. Unfortunately, the numbers just didn't work out, and we couldn't align that. So taking the guidance from the State Department of Ed on the road back, we have to provide an in-person option for the students that want it, as well as provide parents the option to be totally remote should they so choose. So that's the overarching premise and the guidance from our governor's office, as well as the Department of Education, which has led us to these schedules which we were about to share. Okay, regarding the schedules, some overall parameters. All of our students, whether they're participating in person or virtually, they're going to participate at the same time. All right, we're going to try to have cameras in the rooms, have everything set up, and try to make it as convenient for the teachers that are in person to deliver the lessons remotely as well. There's going to be some degree of that synchronous learning that's going to take place while the lesson is occurring. And that's going to be either via Zoom, Google Meets, or other types of classroom environment learning platforms that we can utilize. Some of the younger students use different platforms. The expectation will be that we new curriculum delivered daily and in the same manner to the students that are virtual as the ones that are in person. The students are going to follow a daily schedule that's going to be prescribed, and the grading is going to occur as it would in a traditional model. And it would be the same for the virtual students as it will be for the students that are in person. Some of the assignments may be somewhat different and the delivery of the assignments may be different, but the assessments of the content knowledge will be the same. At this point, we're going to talk about our elementary hybrid schedule. I would ask Mrs. Mahabir if she would mind unmuting herself and explaining this as best as she can.
Hi everyone. As Dr. Bragan mentioned, this has been a labor of love. We have been through many iterations of the schedule to try and address every piece of what we know will be happening, which is student engagement, making sure that the students are receiving social emotional support and getting what they need in terms of instruction. That said, the chart that you see on your screen with the percentages is a general guideline, and Dr. Bragan had mentioned that each school does have a different capacity, so it could change slightly based on the school. Although we feel pretty confident that our current survey numbers are pretty close to what we will have. It could change as we get people changing their decisions after this presentation or get answers from those that are remote. So what you see in front of you is a schedule that we will be conducting for both hybrid and remote students. And this would include time in the morning for all students to join. At 9 o'clock from 9:20, we would do a morning meeting. And this is something that we do in a responsive classroom. It is a community building piece of the day. It allows our students to connect to one another, to practice their social emotional skills. How to greet each other. It allows for sharing, and also some content as well is woven in there. After that time, we will be running a period schedule. Each one will be assigned to a different subject area, and you don't see the subject areas broken up on the schedule only because it may be different for different classrooms, and that's because of scheduling issues. One of those periods will be, for example, language arts, another one would be writing, another one would be math, and we would have one for the students' regular specials, such as Spanish, music, art, etc. We would then dismiss the students at 12:30. Those are the in-person students, and the teachers would be allowed for them to have the lunch at that time, as well as we assume that all the remote students would also have time for lunch. In the afternoon, we have scheduled time for small group sessions, and I want to just explain a little bit about what this might look like. In a normal traditional setting, in an elementary classroom, only about the first 20 to, I would say about 20 minutes is generally whole group. And what that means is that everybody is listening to the teacher teach something. We call it a teaching point. After that time, in a traditional classroom, the students would go off to be in doing something independent, or they would be working in small groups with the teacher or small groups together. During this time, this is the time that the teacher really targets their instruction. That means, for example, if a teacher notices that a student is having trouble decoding, and that means breaking words apart, that's one strategy we use for students to learn how to read, they would then be, in a traditional setting, brought together to a small table where the teacher would work with those students that needed that skill only and work with them for the next 20 minutes or so. So that is the same kind of thing that we're replicating with this schedule. Those small group sessions are set up to provide those more individualized teaching points for students, and it does mirror what we already do in school. So that is a rundown of our schedule for both hybrid and for the students who are home and for those that are in person. Kindergarten is a little bit different. So as of right now, the kindergarten schedule will stay as it is. We normally have an AM session and a PM session. In this case, the AM session will be in the morning, and it will be in person only, and the afternoon session will be remote students only. And we think that this way we'd be able to cater, since it is a smaller period of time, that we'd be able to cater to those students a little bit more easily.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Mahabir.
I think that, yeah.
Fully remote schedule?
Fully remote schedule. So this is, it actually mirrors our other schedule. The only difference is that we've added in a closing circle here. There would be no dismissal time needed. And the closing circle is another time for us to come together and be a community to share out what we've done and to ask questions about anything that happened in the day. So it's another way of providing a forum for students to feel comfortable and to also just close out the day.
Okay, thank you. I would ask Ms. Polakowski at this point to just review the middle school and high school hybrid schedule.
Hello, everyone. So both the middle school and high school will be following the typical single session day. That allows each of the students to meet with every class during the day. And then when they go home for their lunch, and then they will be doing work that was assigned. But in the meantime, the teachers are still available because they will be doing one of several things. Calling a class meeting, possibly doing a lab. They will do small group instruction, individual support, and working with each other to, again, design the lessons for the next day. So we have several groups of teachers that are working over the summer, and this is our work to train them so that the social emotional piece is addressed within the lesson, like helping teachers with those strategies to address the students' needs. The supervisors are working with the teachers to look at bridging from last year. You know, they can't just start up, obviously, with maybe how they would normally start up. They're going to take time to figure out if there were any gaps because of the way we closed. So they will pick up with that, do a lot of formative assessment to see where the students are. Also, we're working with them so we can teach them and help them design lessons for the shorter period so that we're not sacrificing curriculum, we're not sacrificing the learning. The design of the lesson will just be to get to that direct instruction and make sure that the material is covered, and then giving the students some time to work independently as they would in a class or possibly in groups remotely to complete the task. The afternoon, the teachers will be available should the students have concerns. And of course, if the teacher, through their formative assessments, are seeing that the students have concerns, we'll be calling them in for small groups and for individual support. the science guidelines from the state are very clear that labs cannot occur, you know, physical labs. But through this program, a teacher on a Wednesday could call in and do a demonstration possibly of some of those labs. So this is what we're working through with those afternoon class meetings by subject. When we were in remote from March to June, one of the suggestions to us was that, you know, teachers were trying to call meetings, but they were calling them at common times, and the kids were kind of being pulled in different directions. So by assigning a day, we will have times, very specific day of the week for each of those class meetings. The teachers will always be available to the students to be able to work with the small groups, but in the larger groups, they'll have this specific day. And then should we go to complete remote, that would allow us to extend the time period. Right now, trying to get every kid to meet every teacher, for those who have chosen in person with the single session, we followed that bell schedule. But if everyone is remote, we can expand the periods and then still give them time at the end of the day for meetings with students individually, a small group, class meetings, etc. And we're, again, working with the teachers on making sure that just something as simple as directions. When you give directions to a student, and obviously you're hoping all of them are paying attention, and you're in a classroom, you're still available to make sure, you know, if they have any clarifying questions or if someone wasn't paying attention, you can help them. And we know remotely, that's not as easy, because now the student has to move on to his or her next class. So we're helping teachers just with these small, supports, like make sure the students, how do you do that? How do you make sure and get feedback from the students to make sure that they can move on and successfully complete their assignments?
Thank you, Mrs. Polakowski. Dr. Conklin, would you want to review some of our programs for our students with special needs? Dr. Conklin?
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
You are, we can hear you, yes.
I'm unmuted. Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Bregan. Thank you very much. The elementary school will follow the established minutes for each instructional area as delineated in each student's IEP. The schedule will be synchronous with each building and/or grade level schedule, and incorporate asynchronized instruction as needed for the students. There'll be daily in-person instruction. The instruction will be administered and follow the established schedule, program, class, section, grade level. And the students will meet daily with the teacher, either in person or remotely, for all of the in-class and resource center sections. And for the middle school and high school, they'll again follow the instructional minutes as delineated in each student's IEP. And that schedule also will be synchronous within each building and grade level schedule. And will also incorporate asynchronous instruction, which is time for the special education teachers to work specifically with individual students or within small groups. Specifically for the self-contained classrooms that are the independent small group setting, the students will require individual and dedicated work areas. Each student will be provided with the necessary accommodations and modifications for the setting that they're in. For specifically, if the parent chooses remote learning, the students will be provided with the tools and materials needed to actively participate as if they were in school, and it'll be also synchronous and asynchronous classroom activities for those self-contained classrooms. Small group and large group instruction will continue within these settings. However, it will be adapted based on social distancing within the classroom. Teachers will utilize both disposable and dedicated instructional materials to minimize the need to share in these classrooms. Students will be specifically provided from preschool all the way through 12th grade individual materials and instructional supplies to the maximum extent possible. The district will ensure that all students have the access to the appropriate technology devices within the classroom or at home through the special education programs. The child study team procedures. Let me go through the PPE first. Sorry about that. Each staff member will provide district issued face coverings. Additional disposable face coverings will be available in the case that the face covering becomes contaminated. Staff will be issued a face shield in addition to face coverings to be utilized in situations where social distancing cannot be maintained or the possibility of contact with bodily fluids is possible. Face shields will be cleaned and disinfected daily by the person utilizing the face shield. Sharing of face shields will not be permitted. In addition, sneeze guards may be provided where it is necessary, and gloves will be provided as typical in the program and should be worn according to the standard protocols. PPE for students, personal protective equipment that is, all students will wear face coverings. If a student's IEP indicates that the face covering is not to be worn due to a disabling or medical condition, the student will be exempt and documentation will be provided. Other types of PPE may be required for individual students, such as the use of a face shield due to excess spitting or saliva. The IEP team will meet to determine if these supports are necessary. Specifically to the child study team procedures, if a parent or guardian chooses remote learning, each student's IEP will be amended to reflect the remote learning plan. So if a parent decides that the student will not attend in-person instruction, the child study team leader will convene a meeting and then there will be a change in the IEP. Referrals for the child study team and evaluations continue to be accepted and assigned to child study team members to the extent possible, and depending on the availability, most of the evaluations were processed and started over the summer. Hopefully the majority of those evaluations will be completed prior to the start of school. If not, they will be completed as school starts in September, sorry. After the return to school in the fall of 2020, all the outstanding evaluations will be completed. That means that the students will, if they are not in person, will be scheduled to come in to be evaluated by the child study team in person within the school. And they would follow the specific testing protocols that are established and currently being implemented over the summer. All required meetings, IEP meetings, eligibility meetings, planning meetings will be held remotely, and to the extent possible, the child study team members will maintain specific compliance with the timelines that are required under the federal and state regulations. Related services, which include speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, and also services provided by the Teachers of the Deaf. All these services are specified in each student's IEP, will be delivered through a combination of in-person and virtual therapy sessions. All services will be provided according to the frequency and duration that is established by each IEP. When students are in person, therapy rooms will be cleaned and disinfected after each student enters and exits those rooms. In addition, when integration is not feasible, when the teacher cannot, or the speech therapist or the OT or the PT provider cannot push in, the service will be provided outside of the classroom. Hand sanitizers will be used by all staff and students when both entering and exiting each therapy area or room. Specific PPE equipment will be ordered for speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy to ensure that students can maximize their participation in those different therapies. Thank you, Dr. Bragan.
Alrighty. Thank you, Dr. Conklin. I appreciate you going over those programs for us. Just some overall things to review with everyone regarding overall staff safety and student safety. Student and staff health screenings will occur daily and require documentation prior to enter the building. One of the things we're going to have in place are thermal cameras to screen for temperatures, as well as documentation indicating whether you had a fever, you've been exposed to anyone that may have had the COVID-19 in recent time in your household, or traveled to a place where you may have been. Obviously, instructions and reminders are going to be everywhere regarding hand washing, social distancing, mask wearing, sneezing, coughing, eye contact, movement, and bathroom use. Frequent hand washing daily. Hand sanitizers will be throughout the school. Social distancing 6 feet apart in all areas of the building. We're securing stickers and labels now to make sure that's throughout the hallways and our common areas to ensure that. The locker rooms will not be used to ensure social distancing and reduce student contact. Phys ed classes and the like will Students will participate in the clothes that they have when they attend. Faculty and students are required to wear masks. You know, the governor came out with that order not too long ago, but we were going to adhere to that anyway at all times. One-way hallway traffic where possible, and requiring staff and students to quarantine if they've been to any of the hotspots in those states and areas that have been identified where there's high prevalence of COVID-19 active cases currently at this time. Social emotional learning and just caring for our students and trying to put supports in place. I think it's important that we understand, as I said in the beginning, these are unprecedented times for all of us. I know for myself, having been in this game for 32 years, this is a unique environment, but for our children and our teachers as well that don't have the experience that we may have to cope with these things, we need to be cognizant of that. And we're going to provide those supports, again, for our staff and for our students to make sure we're there for them and can support them. And whether that's in a virtual environment or in an in-person environment, we have our path counselors, our normal counselors, our teachers are going to receive training on how to identify students that are potentially at risk and struggling, as well as our administrative team, central office building based as well, in identifying issues for staff that may need support and help. These are unprecedented times, and we're going to be there to support the social and emotional needs of our entire community at this point as well. And we think that's really critical to our success. Some other health issues just to go over. If a student or a staff member is experiencing symptoms that could be associated with COVID-19, we will isolate the individual immediately, have them leave the campus. Require that they get a COVID-19 test, and medical documentation would be required upon their return. If a student or staff member is in a class with someone who has tested positive, the students and staff members who have come into close contact with that individual will need to quarantine for 14 days, and that's the CDC protocol, as well as our State Department of Health expectations. If students and staff are exposed to COVID-19 at home or outside the school building, the students and staff members should self-quarantine as recommended by the CDC guidelines and monitor for symptoms for up to 14 days from their last exposure. Individuals who test positive for COVID-19 are required to submit medical documentation of their diagnosis, their quarantine, and their clearance to return to school. The school district is required to report all positive cases of COVID-19 to the Department of Health. And in conjunction with the New Jersey Department of Health and our local health department, contact tracing would be implemented, again, following those protocols established by the Centers for Disease Control. Some of our cleaning facilities are obviously going to be enhanced, and if Mr. Kalibas can unmute himself, and Mr. Kalibas is our Director of Building and Grounds, would want to go over these slides for me.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Bragan. So we developed an increased cleaning protocol and a routine where we're going to every 30 minutes go through and clean frequently touched objects such as light switches and door handles and sinks. We're also to do an in-depth cleaning. We're purchasing electrostatic cleaning devices, which will help us give a more thorough and in-depth cleaning at night. As part of our schedule, we have a daytime cleaning procedure and then an increased nighttime cleaning procedure when no one's in the building. We're going to sanitize bathrooms whenever possible. It's also part of the 30-minute rotation that the custodial staff will go through. As part of the plan and the road back, we will be providing hand sanitizer stations and disinfectant wipes in each classroom and at every entrance. We're already started and we're checking and servicing all filters, univentilator filters and rooftop filters, as well as air conditioned filters. Part of the plan calls for a checklist. So we'll be implementing a cleaning and disinfecting for each bathroom and classroom with a log sheet of what will be done. And wherever appropriate, we're going to be installing physical barriers such as plexiglass or curtains, clear curtains, as you see all throughout other areas of businesses that you go to.
Thank you, Mr. Kalibas. And just regarding transportation, transportation will be offered to students who are eligible for it. Students must wear masks on the buses. There's going to be assigned seating as well as reduced capacity to spread students out to provide some more of that social distancing. Buses will be loaded from back to front and then unloaded from front to back, so students aren't going to be crossing across each other. You know, the vents and the windows on the bus will be open to the greatest extent possible. Obviously, that's easier in the beginning of the school year than it would be as we progress through the winter months. The bus drivers, and if there are aides on the bus, will be required to wear masks as well. And the buses will be deep cleaned and sanitized in between AM and PM runs also. Some things that are out there that could change our plans. And as we said in the beginning, this is an ever evolving process here, and things could change and become fluid at any moment. This is our initial schedule. It's going to be in place at the beginning of the school year. We're going to start the school year out with the hybrid schedule, as we said. That may change. It may change and be enhanced due to the way the learning is being perceived and how things are coming across and what's successful and what's not. We may want to tweak it. It may be changed by the directives we see from the state, the Department of Education, or the Department of Health. Again, we request that all of our families be patient with us and understand these things may change. And this is a fluid situation with the virus and its progression. As many of you know in the news, and things, while in our immediate area, appear to be much less significant than they were several months ago. Other parts of the country are experiencing what we experienced in March, April, and May. And obviously we don't want that to return. So we are going to take those parameters and directions from our local leaders as well as our governor's office and our Department of Education, which means these may be fluid. The number of families who select remote learning and the number of families who waive transportation, all those things are going to impact our schedules. That's why we made that stipulation. If you choose remote, again, and we'll give the option up until Wednesday to make that change if it need be. We have to stick to that for a marking period because it would significantly impact our schedules for students in our buildings. There's also the number of staff who are unable to return to work. We know we have staff members that are immunocompromised and have other situations that would require them not to be in a building where they could possibly be exposed to other people that may have been exposed to others with the COVID-19. So that's going to impact our schedules as well. And as we said, additional schedules may be developed as we move through this. I think this is something fluid. While we have learned how to do remote learning and pivot when we needed to fairly quickly with the support of our community and our instructional staff in March, we are still in that atmosphere where things may change, pretty quickly, and we need to adjust accordingly, and we will. We have a strong administrative team and a supportive board to make those changes, and we will, as I'll always, work with our community to do so. Obviously, a critical area for remote learning and our hybrid model is our technology. If Mr. Barker is available and he can give us highlight a few of the key components in this slide. If you could do that now, Mr. Barker.
Sure, Dr. Bragan. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as Dr. Bragan mentioned earlier, the district is committed to having uninterrupted technology services, not only for the educational delivery, but also the operational services. With that said, the main focus for requesting internet access or requesting a repair will be through our help desk service. As you see on the slide, we'll have our help desk portal. We also have an email address and a phone number that you could contact us. We're planning to keep in support local to your home school. So if you do have a repair that's needed or you're requesting internet access, you enter a help desk ticket, and a technology technician in conjunction with the school main office will contact you to schedule an appointment. And once that is done, we're planning on keeping a scheduled appointment just for the safety of all participants. And at the bottom of the slide, you'll see we highly encourage device insurance. And if you don't have it yet, we highly encourage you to participate in the insurance plan. It's for your protection, and it just expedites repairs as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Barker. just some additional information to go over that we think is important. As of right now, there are no field trips until further notice for obvious reasons. Before and after care options for our families who are choosing to attend schools in the hybrid model. We have a meeting set up with the township, and we're going to explore those options, how and if we can offer that service to our families. We will try our best to do so. Again, we're in a conversation currently with the township, and we plan on having that meeting. I think it's actually scheduled for midweek at some point. No in-person large group events and no in-person whole school or grade level assemblies we're going to have at this point. Virtual back to school evenings and parent teacher conferences, again, for obvious reasons. Guidance will be forthcoming on the Department of Education security drills. And, you know, we have to follow the parameters and expectations to make sure everybody's safe. But these are unprecedented times, and we've been told there will be additional guidance forthcoming on that. No visitors permitted during the school day. Obviously, we want to limit the amount of people in our building except for emergencies and approved situations. And currently, right now, there's not going to be any outside use of the district buildings by outside groups that typically do use the buildings for a variety of purposes. We recognize these are community resources, our school buildings. However, in this time of pandemic, we have to make sure that the times that are needed to dedicate to enhanced cleaning can occur when the students are no longer in the building in you know, the early mornings and in the early afternoons. So we couldn't achieve that task and open up the building to other people as well. These are a couple links to resources. If you click on these, they will take you to the Centers for Disease Control, the Restart and Recovery Plan, the road back from the Department of Education, our own cleaning manual, just to give you an idea on some of the things that we are doing, and the link on this page here to our district website that has all the information related to our reopening and our pandemic responses and things that we put forth to try to make it in one concise page, you know, to get as much information in as succinctly as possible in that manner. It's where we are right now, guys. This is our, we're going to continue to do our best to support our learning of our students, to provide a safe and secure environment for our staff and students, support our teachers, and to do everything we can to continue to quote the phrase there, to shine bright and provide an optimal educational program for our students. We're committed to that. We're committed to this journey. It's going to be changing. It's going to be ever evolving. And we have a supportive Board of Education. We have a supportive teacher association, as well as our administrative team and all the ancillary supports as far as our maintenance and custodial staffs that really are committed to doing everything we can for our community. So we're very fortunate in that regard. I believe that is my last slide. So at this point, I'm going to stop the screen share, and hopefully I'll get this right with the speaker view, or we'll have everyone so you won't have to see me all the time. But I'm going to read the questions that were submitted. We had hundreds of questions that were submitted to us, and many of them were duplicates. So obviously we wouldn't read the same question over and over again. And I think much of the information that we presented tonight in our slides, which will be uploaded, this whole video will be uploaded, as well as the slides, to our website on that link that we had just spoken of. I'm going to go through the questions. I'll answer the ones that I can. I may defer to some of our administrative team. And then, as I said, at the end, we'll have a discussion or clarify any questions among the administrative team or our honored board member guests. You know, one of the first questions I had was from, how do I change my original response? And we mentioned that in the beginning. We're going to open up the opportunity on the survey if parents wanted to change their response until Wednesday, which is 2 days henceforth. If a parent wants to change their response, whether they selected their child to be in-person instruction or remote, please contact the building principal. Once again, if you want to change your response, contact your building principal. Probably the most efficient way to do that is via email. Okay.
Dr. Bregan, can I quickly ask one question?
Yes.
So earlier we had said that we would allow people who had chosen in person, they could go back to remote anytime that they wanted. Has that changed now? Is August 12th the last day for them to make that change now?
Great question. I appreciate that, Mrs. Madigan. No, parents can always select that option. If you
Okay.
decide to come in person and a week goes by, or 2 weeks go by, and as a parent or as a student isn't comfortable in that environment anymore, they can always choose to go remote. We just can't always go the other way because that would impact our schedules. Great question. Thank you. If I choose to switch to remote learning, what is the process and the time frame? Kind of along the same lines there as Mrs. Madigan just asked. Contact the principal, and I would think that that could be almost instantaneous. If a student's in school today and decides that they no longer want to come in person, they want to switch to remote, the parent would contact the principal. And again, I think that should be almost instantaneous and would not take much time to do. Again, I just wanted to clarify, I think I hit this one already, but it said, why can't the parent who chooses to remote learning switch if they want to whenever? And that's really for what we said, it would impact the students' schedules for in-person as well as transportation. And again, that commitment is only at this point for the marking period. We do believe this is a fluid, ever-evolving situation, and we will revisit those requests as we approach the end of the first marking period. Another question, will masks be worn at all times? The answer is yes, by staff, students, visitors, and people in the building. That's the expectation, that when we have our schools are open to student personnel, the masks will be used at all times. I think Mr. Barker answered this question, but I'm going to re-emphasize it. If my laptop or device is not working, how do I get it fixed? You would contact the information, and it will be on the website for a help desk, put in a help ticket. Our technology team did a great job in the spring in providing that service for our students, and they would continue to do the same. That's for our remote students as well as our students that are in person. Question came up regarding orientations, whether that's initial orientation as a kindergarten student, orientation at high school or middle school. Right now, those orientations are going to be conducted via a video or a virtual kind of walkthrough. I think it's a great idea to do that and provide that support for our students. In addition to letting our students who are returning to our buildings, where this may not be an initial orientation, they've been here before, it's a new building. It's a new way of entering the building. As we said, we're going to have thermal cameras screening people on the way in. We're going to have a social distancing practices put in place. There's going to be areas that are identified where you would stand and you would wait. There's going to be plexiglass barriers in the office. So I think it's a really good idea for us to have a virtual walkthrough for students, even those that have been in our schools before. So that was a great suggestion. Following up on that, another question was, will isolation boards be installed in all the classrooms and cafeterias? They're going to be in different locations. At this point, the way the schedule we have, we're not offering lunch for a variety of reasons. One is that, as I said earlier, we can't have dining inside in New Jersey currently. I don't know how we could do it safely with hundreds of students in a building for lunch. But in our main office and other areas where staff members are going to interact on a regular basis with a large group of either community members, such as our office, or students, there will be plexiglass partitions that are put in place, similar to you would see at convenience stores and the supermarkets and other things at this point. Will middle school students travel between classes? And if so, will the desks be sanitized between periods? The answer to both of those questions is yes. Middle school and high school students will travel to different classes. There's no way to do the schedules otherwise, especially with the large number of students in each of our secondary schools. But we will make sure that everything is sanitized in between.
Dr. Bregan?
Yes.
Yes, are you taking questions as you go, or you want us to hold it to the end?
It's probably easier to hold them to the end, Jerry, unless you.
Okay. No, because okay.
Because we may answer it as we go through.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
One of the other questions is regarded to, will the nurses be present in the school? Absolutely. Our nurses are medical and health professionals in each building, and they will be there as they normally would, if they're able to. Will there be social workers and child psychologists available in our schools? Again, our child study team personnel would be there as they normally would. I think we need to be more attentive to the social and emotional needs of our students, as well as our path counselors. and the supportive counseling services that we contract out from Rutgers University. Will each desk in the classroom be facing forward, and will plexiglass partitions be on each desk? All the desks will be facing forward, which is sometimes counter to what many of our elementary students typically would do, where they face each other and they have small pods and small groups. But for the time being, that is the expectation. They will be facing forward. They will be placed 6 feet apart. Each desk will not have a plexiglass partition on it. We believe the social distancing with the students with the masks and being 6 feet apart, limiting the number of students in each classroom will suffice for that. This is an interesting question from a social emotional perspective. How will virtual students stay connected with their classmates? And I would ask if Mrs. Mahabir could elaborate on that answer.
Sure. As you noticed in the schedule that we had set up for elementary school, there is already designated a morning meeting and closing session, and those are specifically designed to create community. But the other reason for the small group that we had incorporated that both through K through 12 is because that allows for smaller groups of students to be able to kind of connect. So aside from that, we're also making sure that I know K through 12, we have committees working on, as Gail mentioned, social emotional learning. So we're hoping to be able to provide for those connections throughout the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Mahabir. Another question is, will there be parent-teacher conferences during the school year for all students? The answer is yes. Most likely, if this continues in the same vein as we are now, they will be virtual though, and not in person, just because of the large volume of people that would be coming for those. Will attendance be taken virtually and in person? And the answer would be yes. The expectation is, again, much of the learning is going to take place in a synchronous environment where the teachers will record the attendance for each of the students. And those that are not attending, either in person who are scheduled or virtually and not logging in, we will follow our same attendance procedures and try to reconnect with those students and make sure they're there. Can gym be incorporated into the child's schedule? We do anticipate having phys ed classes. It will be a little bit of a different phys ed dynamic where students will be spread farther apart. As you know, in a phys ed environment and even in some of our music environments for the students that are on site, there's a large degree of respiration taking place there and a lot of air coming in and out. So you may want to be farther apart than the 6 feet, which is the guidelines that are prescribed, and we will adhere to that for those in person. Those that are remote, it'll be a different type of phys ed and class, but they will be incorporated as well. The lunches was an issue that we thought we could somehow come up with a solution that would be able to be safe for everyone and still adhere to the social distancing parameters. And we don't think we're able to do that at this point. It's one of the reasons we chose the schedule that we did. So there isn't going to be a lunch per se for the students, but lunch will be offered. For those students that are food insecure and have free and reduced lunch availability, they will be offered lunch. And they'll also be offered breakfast, I do believe, but we're working out those parameters, and they may have both of those meals at the same time to take them to go. As we did similar when we went remote, we did offer those meals to the students, again, that were food insecure. So we're working out the parameters now. We just got some guidance from the Department of Agriculture on how we will achieve that. What are the testing protocols, logistics for remote learning, as well as conducting the PSAT for the 10th grade? I think this question came up before in our curriculum committee meeting. The PSAT and other assessments such as that are really not dictated by the school districts, but more of the College Board. And I think the PSAT is currently scheduled for October 14th. I don't know if that's going to take place, but we'll take direction from the College Board. And if the PSAT is offered, you know, when we normally would offer it to students, even students that are remote, we will try to accommodate that as best we can. And again, we haven't really spent time planning for that, but if that's an option, we will try to bring that to fruition. Again, making sure students and staff are safe and things are socially distant. Next question, what are the accommodations for students in elementary grades receiving specific supportive services, i.e. reading, math interventions, and are potentially moving through the referral process for specific learning needs? Dr. Conklin mentioned the referral process for students with special needs, and that would be somewhat similar as it is now. and we will adhere to that. And Mrs. Mahabir, do you want to talk about the interventionist aspect?
Sure. And we still will be conducting intervention and referral service committee meetings to be able to identify students. And we will still have criteria as well. So those students that qualify will still receive support from the reading specialists and interventionists.
Thank you. The next question, it says, if classroom doors remain open, what additional safety measures do you have in place for a potential active shooter scenario? Our classroom doors typically were open before we went remote as well. Especially in an elementary environment, we try to create that open environment where students can flow from one class to another when appropriate. However, that doesn't take away from the security of the building. You know, we still have armed security guards at every building, as well as our additional unarmed security in each building. And our protocols to access our building have not changed. Actually, with the screening of the thermal cameras and other things, they're probably more enhanced, and there'll be more people at the front door to limit the amount of access that we have into the building. So that's not going to change. I don't see having an individual classroom door that's open is any different than we normally would. And should there be a lockdown procedure, teachers will close those doors quickly as they normally would in any other situation. Have the teachers been given training on how to effectively live stream the lessons so that all students have equal access to high quality education, both during remote and in-person learning? It's a great question. We're in the process of doing that now. We have a commitment from our staff development team as well as our administrative team to provide the supports and services for that. We are currently doing it, and we have had hundreds of teachers that have participated currently. And as I said in the beginning, that schedule change on that pivot is geared towards providing an additional training, a full day of professional development before the students come back that we had originally scheduled, I believe, for October 22nd. One of the other things too is we're looking to install high definition cameras in the classrooms, in the middle of the classrooms, that will be connected to the teachers' devices so that they may control them the same way they would via a Zoom or a Google Meet or even a Seesaw, something to which I don't know as much about as the other ones. And the reason for that is the teacher doesn't have to sit in front of the computer as we're doing today, but if it's in the middle of the classroom, it's another tool for the teachers to be able, that are in person, to teach, to do what they normally would, and have it almost captured without their thinking of it, their instruction and their interactions, while they will still have total control over that because it will be connected to their own computer and their learning platform, whether it's Google Meet or Zoom. They don't have to worry so much as we do now, as our face is in front of the screen, that they could just do what they normally would do as a teacher. Again, those are some of the things that the district has supported to put in place to help facilitate this instruction that can be both remote and in person at the same time. Some other cleaning questions. Will children be provided wipes to clean their desks? The answer is yes. We have already secured a significant amount of cleaning materials, including wipes, and we'll make sure we have a sufficient supply on demand at all times. We do have vendors that have these materials. I know maybe in the general public, it's tough to get access to those things, but we do have that. And the same thing, the other question is there enough alcohol-based liquid soap in the bathrooms? There is, and we'll make sure we have at least a month or two in advance supply. How often will the bathrooms and classrooms in the school be cleaned? Mr. Colibus, you want to just touch on that if you're can access that?
Yes, sir. So we'll be on a 30-minute rotation where our custodial staff will be walking around. They will be cleaning the bathrooms throughout the day as much as possible. In addition to that, so we have a plan in place for that, Dr. Bragan.
Thank you, sir. Backpacks. This is an interesting one. I think it's more geared towards secondary. Will students be allowed to wear their backpacks in the hallways and on their way to their classes? Ms. Polakowski, you want to address that?
Yes, they will be allowed to. We're not using their lockers, so in order for them to have their materials, they'll be allowed to carry their backpacks.
Okay, thank you. Another question was, will there be sports? As I said in the beginning, as it is now, even though the Big Ten and the MAC-10 and the SEC has canceled their fall seasons, sports in New Jersey are still slated to be on. the NJSI AA, our sanctioning body for interscholastic athletics, has said that students can participate. Students that are remotely learning can participate in on-site sports. And as far as I know, as of today, our Greater Middlesex Conference, which is our athletic conference for both schools, permits that as well. So as I said in the beginning, much of this is fluid, but for today, that is, the sports are on as we know it. And we're actually into phase 2 of the practices that are taking place right now. So they're up to groups of, I think, 25 is what's permissible at this point. They've been practicing for a number of weeks now, our teams. Who will be performing temperature checks and how many times per day will they occur? What temperature threshold constitutes a fever? The temperature checks will be performed when students enter the building, and staff for that matter. We are securing the thermal cameras that are going to do that. And then any students that identified for potentially being elevated will be screened individually. The threshold is, we're following the protocols from the Centers for Disease Control, which is 100.4. And most likely for those screenings that are going to take place individually, it would be one of our security guards. This question is an interesting one. I don't know if I have a 100% answer, but it says, will the Edison Public School District accept liability should students or staff members happen to contract the virus due to the decision to open schools? The decision to open schools has not been the board's, nor was it mine. We were directed by the governor's office to make sure we provided a school schedule to reopen in September that had in-person options for staff, for students, and allowed parents the option, if they weren't comfortable, to select totally remote. We followed those guidelines and procedures, and there's really nothing else we can do at this point that's within the bounds of the law. Clubs and after-school activities, for the most part, except those that are deemed, as we said, like the marching band and some other things, and fall sports. Right now, interscholastic sports are scheduled to take place. They're in phase 2 of their practice season. Then I believe the season opens up mid-September. Unless something changes, that will progress as it is, planned to. As far as clubs in the buildings for some of the elementary schools, I would imagine most of those clubs are going to be all virtual right now. So, in our club or music club, while it's not ideal as it would be in person, it still offers the opportunity for children to explore those areas that they may be of interest to them.
Dr. Bregan, I'm sorry. While you're talking about the sports, so if the football team is practicing come September, they can start games. Will there be fans in the stands, or the volleyball team or the soccer team? Because the professionals aren't doing it, but are we allowed to do it for the high school students if we practice social distancing?
That's a great question, Mrs. Conway. I wish I had the answer. I would want to say yes, because we were able to have graduations up to a certain amount if we had social distancing, but that was for graduation. So I'd have to get clarification on that. We would definitely find out, though. I will get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Regarding the before and after care program, I spoke earlier about that. We're in conversations with the township. As again, I have a meeting scheduled, I believe it's this Wednesday, to review that. If we can provide that support services for the families that are sending their children to school in a way that's appropriate, we will do that. Those are the questions that were submitted, again, via the email. We went over them all as a team. We sorted them. We went over all the ones that were not duplicated or not explained in the presentation. So should people have questions outside of this, please submit them again. And we could do one of two things. We could touch base and have another forum like this. We could answer them via a frequently asked questions kind of guide and have that as an ongoing dialogue on our website. And we'll take direction on that as we move forward. So at this point, I would open the discussion up to the board members as well as our administrative team. I know Mr. Shi, I think you had a question earlier.
Yes. So Dr. Bregan, thank you, in administration, and thank you for our superintendent to work on this plan. As we know, it's a tough situation. There's no plans 100% that can meet everybody, but we try to do our best. So with that said, I just want to have a couple questions. This is my first question is about our special need population. I saw that we had a, you analyzed the data, you went a little bit deep, which each school, which I'm very glad to see that. So do we have a data for our special needs population? Is that follow the same percentage, or for our special needs, they have a little bit more percentage of students want to come back to school? That's my first question. Let's go by one, or you want to go me ask? I have a lot, so let's go by one. Yeah.
Maybe we can just go by topic. I also have a special needs question.
On the special needs question, I have not broken that data down by the special needs population. And they will be afforded the same option as our general needs population, in that if they choose to be educated remotely, they can. Unless Dr. Conklin has more specific information, I don't have it broken down by that data yet, but we can, Mr. Shea. Dr. Conklin, do you have it any differently or no?
No, we just look at the percentage that you provided us through the general one, and that's really what we use as our guideline. We don't really delineate between special education and general education in terms of developing the program. So,
well,
I provide it either way.
Okay, thank you. But I think that you know, for special ed, the population, it's a little extra burden for the families to take care of the kids, especially both parents are working. So I hope that we can look into that and look at the breakup of the special ed and a regular ed. So the second question is, so yeah, I'm done with special ed. Shavi, why don't you go ahead with special ed?
So I just had a question. Somebody asked me this question. So if somebody's child was in full day preschool till March, will they still get that? And what would the preschool hours be for special needs classroom? And this is specifically for the FDR preschool.
Great question. Dr. Conklin, we talked briefly about the preschool schedule. Are you able to share that now, that information?
Sure, I will do my best to share it right now. Obviously, this could change based on the number of students that decide on in-person by August 12th. But the schedule would be every day in-person instruction, 5 days a week. And the students would be split scheduled 6 and 6 if we have everyone coming into school. If we don't have everyone coming into school, they would remain as a full day schedule, and we'd have half the students or a little less than half the students working remotely and the remainder of the students in the building. So we have a plan for if all the students return, and we need to make sure we adhere to social distancing, and we have a plan if students don't return for the full time, and that is for the half-day preschool program as well. So if all the students come back, and that would be 24 students in a day, they would each receive 90 minutes of direct in-person instruction, which would be split into 3 sessions of the day. So you'd have 8 students, a half an hour break, 8 students, then you'd have a lunch and a prep for the teacher and another 90 minutes of the 8 group. If not, if we have less students in person than the full 24 students, then we can continue the existing schedule and provide that as a full day program.
Thank you.
Okay, so my other questions, when I look at the data that Dr. Bregan, you provided, each school, the percentage is different. So a lot of the schools are below 25%, but I looked at, there are a couple of schools at Herbert Hoover in Washington, they're more than 25, there are probably some others, right? So it could be, is it possible that it could be in the same school district based on the students who comes into which school, they have a different path for the a hybrid model? Because for 25 to 50%, we break into 2 sessions, right? A, B groups, and then Wednesday in the middle. And for the school that has less than 25%, everybody comes in for every single day.
It could be. You know, we talked about that as an administrative team. And while those numbers are overall rough parameters, because some of our buildings have larger classrooms than others and can accommodate, let's say Lincoln School can accommodate on average 8 to 9 students. You may have students at Woodbrook Elementary School whose classrooms may be a little bigger, can accommodate on average, let's say 10 to 11. So that 25% is a guideline, not an absolute. But I do believe in what you're saying, and we'll have these exact numbers in the very near future, that it could be different at one school than another, because otherwise what you would be saying to parents is that Well, your school only has 25%, and yet in order to be consistent, your child's only coming in person 2 days as opposed to 5. To me, that doesn't seem fair. So in some buildings, we can make it work. In some buildings, we may have to do alternate day plans as we had listed there, AA, and then Wednesday, and then BB days. For
Okay.
in person.
Can I ask
So-
one question now?
Yeah, there's another question about the data. You have a question about data or another question about the data?
No, I don't have
So-
a question.
Okay, so the question about data is that now we are asking parents to make the changes. Will that the new data be made available to the parents after Tuesday, Wednesday?
I don't see why not. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. I have a lot of other questions. Should I go on or what? My next question
No,
is
let me ask this one very. Can I ask this one very important
No,
question?
I have this one very important question. This is
Okay.
what we have been discussing.
Sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
This is then you can ask. This is the following question. This is a question the school board members and the administration has been discussing this. So is the instruction time. So if you look at the both schedules, we have reduced instruction times for both elementary and high school. Right. So I'm glad that we are installing cameras that Dr. Bregan you mentioned, that you can do live interactions between students and teachers. So with that said, the concern of some of the board members is the timing. So right now, if you look at the hybrid schedule for high school, we are going the half-day schedule. It's 25 minutes instruction versus a traditional 43 minutes, 40 or 42 minutes, right? 43, I think. So we're losing 18 minutes per period, okay? And in the afternoon, right now, the plan is not clear as to what other things that they're gonna do, right? So you're talking about small groups and stuff like that. But if you look at Princeton, they have half-day schedules, right? In the afternoon, they also have half-day sessions, so they can continue to teach. So if we already have the interactive, online learning with the live stream, can we have more time? Just follow the traditional time with the instruction, so the students can have can learn more, because some of the topics it's 25 minutes. It's very hard to teach certain topics. So you can probably get 5 minutes just to hook up, and you have another 20 minutes to cover it. So can we just use like 1 day in a week as additional help instead of every single afternoon? And that is something that we've been discussing with the administration, and I thought there was some things going to be changed, but I didn't see it. So if you can clarify that, that's a big confusion for some board members and some parents. Then Shiva, you can ask the following questions.
Yeah.
I have more, but
I mean, I just wanted to add.
Yeah,
That's,
Dr.
it's on the same topic, Jerry.
Yeah.
We did talk about this in the curriculum meeting that we had right before this, and is it 25 minutes or is it 35 minutes?
25 minutes for high school.
Okay.
If you look at half-day schedule.
So this concern was brought up in the curriculum committee meeting as well, and then the committee members were concerned about the loss of instruction time, and also and I think we also spoke about other schools which are doing similar things, but they're doing it like as a model. So yeah, I would also want to hear about how do we make up for the loss of time.
A couple things, and I'll ask respond as best I can, and then I'll ask Ms. Polakowski to weigh in as well. One of the things is, I think it's important for us to understand that 72% of our population elected to totally remote instruction. And while we have to, by state directive, provide in-person instruction to our students, which is averaging 28% at this point across the district, different by each school, as you mentioned on the data. And while we have cameras in the room, and they're going to be a Zoom type instruction, synchronous with the students that are at home, it's not as good as being in the classroom. And anyone that's going to tell you otherwise is not being truthful. So when you have to balance in person with remote in the same class with a full cadre of students, being a smaller number in person and a larger number remote. We believe that if you don't dedicate time at the end of the day to touch base and to check in with those students that are totally remote, whether that's structured time by content area, by difficulty, you're not doing as well a service to the students that are remote, which is the majority, as you are with the students that are in person. To have the expectation for our teachers, and we have great teachers, that they're going to be able to navigate both of those waters, in person and remote, at the same time, synchronously, and do it expeditiously for both groups of students. Anyone that's been in a teaching field knows that that's just not possible. So initially, we did leave that time at the end of the day. It's not a free time. It's not a catch-all time. It's for teachers to work with students, the ones primarily that are remote, and to check in, touch base, do what they need to do to support their learning, give them that one-to-one small group time that they would normally have in school that they're not going to have access to, even though they're going to participate via a camera. That's not the same as being in the classroom. So that being said, that's the expectation to start. The other thing is, and we talked about it at curriculum committee, this schedule is to start the year. It's to get the ball rolling, to start off in September. If we realize, and we may realize it quickly, that we need to pivot and adjust and change and make that end of the day more rigid and say that, we're going to extend the periods in the secondary by the initial time and then provide that for period 11 and 12, that other hour and 15 minutes at the end, we will do that. And this is to get us started, to get us off the ground, and to get everybody acclimated to it, because it is a new paradigm. If you remember in the spring, we shifted and we went to remote learning, but everyone was remote. That's a different paradigm. I'm going to ask Ms. Polakowski if she could weigh in on this point now, because I know we talked about this at length with the secondary perspective.
Yes, thank you. There's this sense that if we give up time, the kids are not going to learn as much. And a good lesson is not about time on task. It's not about the time spent with the teacher. It's about the design of the lesson. What task is that student being asked to do? And that's what we're working on with our teachers. We know that we have to find the same curriculum, cover the same material in a little bit of time that they're in front of them, but they're going to be doing the work beyond the classroom. So a good teacher doesn't just stand in front of a room and do direct instruction. A good teacher is a facilitator. And our teachers have been trained on this. So they will push the students to explore and research and think critically and be creative. And that's what will make for the good lesson, not the time that they spend with them. But this gives them the opportunity in the afternoon to go back and have that check-in for the students that may be struggling, or even those that are not struggling and actually want to talk about what they're exploring and researching and so forth. And as Dr. Bragan said, we've already had this conversation that should it need to change, we will definitely change it. But we are spending time, teachers, our Edison teachers are very knowledgeable, and we have been spending time working together in the summer to look at ways to help teachers design these lessons for remote instruction. And that's some of the PD that they're going to get when we open.
Well, I'm not asking a new question. I'm just going to elaborate on this one. So Shivi could ask the new question. So my problem is that right now we have 43 minutes for high school. Is that correct? Now we're cutting to 25. So you're cutting almost half the instruction time. So I respectfully disagree with you can teach the entire subject in half the time. I understand the afternoon is helpful, but it's an optional, right? So, why don't we make the afternoon to continue the class that we did not finish, or we take the afternoon to one afternoon, we'll have 2 sessions, right? To talk about the things that we need to cover additionally. It's not an optional for all the students. Just like they're sitting in a classroom that teacher will teach for 20 minutes, but the student has to do their homework, and teacher need to check on them. And I don't want to be a free fall you know, for the students who, you know, who already behind, and they're not having opportunity to catch up. And if you leave it free to them, then there's a possibility they don't get in to the set afternoon. And also on the elementary side, we have 4 periods, okay, for the afternoon. How does this, the small group, is that we are dividing the class into 4 small groups, each group calling at 1 period? Is that how that design is?
I'll ask Mrs. Mahabir to weigh in on that at one point, elementary, but just on the secondary, Ms. Shi, I don't think the expectation that it's just voluntary or whenever they want to check in. I think we have to make sure that the expectation is that it's not voluntary, that there's there will be requirements and what they have to do, and we'll shore that up and make sure people understand that. That may be unclear. Mrs.
Well,
Mahabir.
let's make it on a schedule. That's what we've been asking the administration. Make it clear on a schedule. We have another period. We have another 2 periods in the afternoon. Okay, you can be this subject or that subject. We have 2 periods in the afternoon. Right now, it's a small group. It's PLC. It's PDs. It's everything. It's too vague, and we need those time to be dedicated to the students. We needed the time to have interactions between teacher and students to continue the thing that we're not able to have due to the shortened class time.
Understood. I don't think the, you know, I don't want to go back to the slides now, but in the secondary hybrid model, the afternoon wasn't just wide open for, it was dedicated by subject by the day of the week, but we could shore that up even more moving forward. Mrs. Mahabir, can you talk about the small group instruction at elementary and the value in that?
Sure. The reason it is split up, I had mentioned this during the presentation as well, is this is what we do on a normal everyday basis in school. We teach a whole group lesson for about 20 minutes or so, and then everybody goes off to small group independent work, or you're pulled to the back table with the teacher. And so the idea of providing this at home is the same exact thing, which is that we are able to really talk to 5 remote students at a time and be able to touch base with them, figure out what it is that they need specifically at that time period. So it does allow us to sort of target that information for them. This is exactly what we would do during a traditional school day as well. This is what happens in a traditional in-person school day, is that the teacher would do a 20-minute lesson at the beginning. That's the only whole group piece of it. And then at that point, everybody does disperse to do independent or small group work. So it is exactly mirroring our school day currently. And this is for every subject we usually do this. So there is never a situation that we are just standing in front of class and talking for 45 minutes.
Yeah, but you're the groups are doing it together. Now you're separate. You know, you have one group calling at the, you know, at 1:30, the other calling at 2:30, the third group calling, you know, whatever. So that's not the traditional way of, as you said, we do the teaching. And another question is on the schedule is, why for the full remote, for the middle school have 2 15-minute break, you know, for that? That's another 30-minute instruction time lost.
So I just had a suggestion for the preschool that you were talking about, Maninder. So you're talking about the entire class kind of breaking up in four groups, and then the teacher individually talking to these 4 groups separately. Now, in a regular school day, if I understand correctly, the students also disperse in 4 groups, and they'll sit in 4 corners, and the teacher will talk to all of those 4 groups. So right now what is happening is that like one third of the time they're really not getting, because you know, only 1/4 of the time every group is getting. So is it possible that when the teacher is in a group session with one group, like the other groups, all the other students can also kind of watch what's going on, and then the activity time could be you know, when that group is in focus?
So the issue is that the learning that's designed for each small group is very specific to that group. So even if you had other groups watching, though, that learning would not apply to them necessarily. let's say that in our classes, we have a large range of students' abilities. We have kids in honesty, we have kids in kindergarten that come in reading at a 3rd grade level. We have a very high performing group of students in Edison, and the range is huge. And so you may have a student who's reading at a 3rd grade level, and yet another kindergarten student who may just need the basics of phonics, which is just the sounds. And so it doesn't really make sense to do that, because you would either have information that's above the head of the student or way below where that student is. So that's why it is so targeted. And in a normal classroom, this is exactly what we would do, is that we don't sit together as a group for the entire day. It doesn't work like that in a normal situation. So the only difference is that in this schedule is that we're just breaking. So let's say that we were taking a normal, we don't even necessarily do 45-minute periods. There are instructional minutes for each subject area. For example, math. So instead of just lumping the entire thing together, which is the whole group and the small group, now we're just taking the whole group and doing that part in school, either asynchronous for the remote, and then the smaller group is in the afternoon. So it's just split our subject area, but it really isn't any different than what we do currently.
Well, but Benita, the thing is, what Chevy said is, you are doing this 4 separately. In a traditional class setting, all those 4 groups are doing it together. You're just giving different instruction. They're in the same classroom the whole day, right?
They're in the same classroom, but they're not working on the same topic necessarily.
Yeah, but why can't you do the same thing online? You have one group, you have 4 groups working together, but you have provide different instructions. So the thing that the group is a bit divided into 4, and the student only got one group session in the afternoon.
It may not be just one group session. A student could be a member of a few different group sessions. It all depends on what the child needs. For example, if you have someone who needs extra experiences, they could be in several things. So it doesn't mean that they're just in one small group in the afternoon. The other thing is, I think you're asking if there could be some asynchronous assignments provided, because that we could do that. We couldn't have the teacher kind of watch necessarily all the kids in the class while she's working with or she or he is working with a small group. That would be almost impossible.
Well, I would, I had email with Dr. Bregan, because I really want our day program not to, for the online students, not to like watch TV. I really want to see there are some interactions from the teachers with these students, even during the day when the camera is set up. And I'm glad that we have the software that's connected to the teacher's computer, so that has the interactions. And I really hate to see that they just watching TV, all day.
Yeah, I don't think that that's the experience we're going to provide. It is certainly more difficult to engage a kindergartner, having been on the other side of remote learning. As a parent, it is, and I have my daughter is very, let's say, studious and follows the rules, and I still had difficulty with her, engaging her for even the short time that she was involved in remote learning. So we are trying to make sure that it's developmentally appropriate too. To have a 6-year-old online for the entire day is not developmentally appropriate, and not something that we would want to force our kids to be on with the screen time. And so we're trying to provide that balance. Unfortunately, as Dr. Bregan said, there's no perfect answer.
There's no perfect answer.
There's no perfect answer. And
I mean, just another solutions approach, like I always think of solutions whenever I see a problem, is like if you might have like 4 or 5 different sections in any grade level, and obviously all those 4 or 5 different sections might have different levels of kids. So is it possible to kind of, just for the breakout sessions, combine those levels and to make sure that everybody is now getting that remote group lessons?
Everything's up for possibility, so we can certainly look at that. The only thing I would say is then again, you're making a group size larger. And again, developmentally with the kids, really to be focused in on our instruction, we really want it to be no more than 4 to 5, 6 kids per group. Once you start getting bigger than that, as you know, you've been on many of these meetings, it can be difficult to have discussions, that can be difficult to ask questions, especially when you're asking 7-year-olds to do it. And that they tend to be a little bit more talkative than us adults. So certainly we can look at that and see how that might work.
And also we did talk in the curriculum meeting that maybe this rollout can be like just for a month, and then we revisit and see what's working well, what's not working well. You know, maybe this ends up being really good. Maybe this ends up being really bad, and this needs to be kind of fixed. So let's not like look at this as something permanent, and that, you know, just look at the process and keep thinking about how to improve and how to kind of better, you know, provide the learning.
Well, why can't we do the other way around? You know, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The only thing I would like to add, as a former teacher, parents have to understand that teachers are very fluid as far as teaching the main subject, giving the instruction, and then moving on into small groups, whether it be enrichment or enhancement or just further instruction. That teacher is going to be able to utilize that extra time in the afternoon to reach out on various subjects at various paces, and it's probably the best time where the teacher will be able to work with those small groups and reach them where they need to be reached, whether it is for enrichment, working with a team to see what they're doing, where they want to go, to reach out to another group to see how are you doing, what are you doing, what are your needs, or reaching out to the children to get the extra instruction that they need to make them be positive instruction. We need to give the teachers the parameters of what they need to do to be successful with the children. Like right now, we're looking at a block schedule. Oh, it's 2 o'clock, I have to do this now. Oh, it's 2:30, I have to do this now. At the morning meetings and the afternoon meetings, they can establish what we need to do for the rest of the day. Let's work on this, let's work on that. And you'll be surprised, that's what's being done for years in the regular classroom. They got their initial instruction, and then the teacher is able to move around to work with the appropriate groups and what they need. We're just seeing it from the outside right now, and it looks like it's in cement what we have to do. But you'd be surprised, trust the professionals to utilize that extra time to work with the students to meet their needs at all the different levels. And it won't turn out to be that they're losing instruction. In those small groups, Jerry, they're actually going to be gaining instruction to bring them to whatever heights they need to go. My 2 cents.
I just don't want those afternoon session become optional. So, you know, I don't not want the kids who say, I don't want to call in. So, you know, that is not the way the traditional setting in the classroom. Once you're in a classroom, you're broken into 4 groups or 5 groups. You are there to finish whatever you're told to do. And that is the thing that we're asking. And I hope that administration or you know, can make it clear. And this we're talking about elementary school. Let's talk about the middle and high school. It's the same kind of a situation, you know. So the afternoon right now, it's too vague, and people can choose not to attend. Then we already lose time in the morning. We need time in the afternoon, and still. Again, I asked that question for middle school for full remote. Why we have another 2 15-minute break and we're losing another half an hour during the day?
I think we're losing sight of the teachers here. The teachers are not automatons. And as Mrs. Conway said, they're not just going to come in and punch a clock and put in their 4 hours here, their 2 hours there. That's not what we do. We develop human capital working with children. And, you know, I think somebody said before, well, just put them in the room without anybody watching them. Really? You ever put a room of 6, 7-year-olds and leave the room? It's not going to happen, especially in an academic environment. And I think to think so is naive. And at some point, We have a bunch of dedicated educational professionals in our field as teachers as well as administrators. And people that don't have that expertise are weighing in, and I don't think it's appropriate. Why do we have a 15-minute break for totally remote learning? Because children can't sit in front of a computer for 4 hours without taking a break. It's not appropriate. It's not developmentally appropriate. The best way to educate children is in person. We don't have that option anymore. We have an option to do some blend in between right now, which is not great for either one. I said it from the beginning. And to have people work longer periods, to put in more time in front of the computers without having breaks, I don't think is appropriate. And everyone has said, this is what we're going to start with. If it needs to be tweaked, we'll tweak it. And I trust in our teachers, the educational professionals, many doing this as long as me, if not longer, and definitely more expertise in their content areas with their specific age groups and in their classrooms, will come to us with ideas and suggestions. And our administrative team and our board has always been receptive. I know there are some parents that see time in front of the teacher, time dedicated just in minutes to the room, as being the end all be all, and that's not it. As you said before, Mr. Shi, in the secondary, students are different in secondary. They can do a little bit more independent work. So that minutes that they lose, we can cover the content, the instruction, the topic of the day, the objective, and then they could work independently much more so than the elementary students. And they're afforded that option. This isn't the best schedule. There is no best schedule. And when you look at our county and other districts that are high performing, such as us, everybody has something somewhat similar. Everyone's a little bit different, but other than what I heard was Princeton, and that's not a place that I know of, so I can't speak to it knowledgeably. But other than what I heard about Princeton, I don't know anyone that's going a full day. So I think we're doing the best. We're trusting in the judgment of our educational professionals who we pay for their judgment to make education appropriate decisions. And I think that's the way we should go.
Thank you, Dr. Breggin, because these are the questions that from, the parents. So, it was not addressed. So that's why we raise that up, right? So, I don't think that you can say, hey, your parents, you're not a teacher, you're not allowed to ask these questions, but that's their question. So,
but I didn't say that.
Okay. So you're, I have full faith with our educators. Okay, they have done a fantastic job, on a short notice in the past, 3-4 months. Okay, there's no preparation. I'm pretty sure they're going to do much better job this time when, we have the summertime to prepare them. But these are the things that, we need to let parents know. And, these are their concerns. So let's address them. That's why we're here today. That's what the forum is. And that's why we ask them to send these questions to the administration so we can answer them.
Understood. And I don't want to go on record as saying anything that I don't want to hear parents' concerns or questions. That's not what I meant. I said that the educational professionals can help delineate and determine the best needs in the classroom. And I think they have. And these questions I do respect, and I know we did talk about it to yourself, Mr. Shi, and some other board members. Those questions didn't come up in the emails that was sent to me. So they're sending to me. Maybe I should tell them to send to you. But once they start seeing the plans, these questions start developing, right? So they did not see the plan until today about this full schedule. So what I think would be appropriate for our parents at this point is, because the schedule, all this whole recording is going to be out there, and we're going to have it on our website. The two things we could do, we could either have another forum, and I think I mentioned this earlier, next week, when the parents have a chance to digest it and give them another opportunity to submit their questions and concerns in this venue, or they could just email us directly and we'll do what we can with a frequently asked questions kind of thing. But I don't disagree with that the parents were not aware of the intricacies of each schedule that are going to be shared, and it'll be on the website, if I know Mr. Barker, before we exit the meeting tonight. And then if they review it and have other questions, that perhaps we set up another forum where we address those specific questions. That seems to be, that would make sense.
Yeah, we need another forum, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Shiv.
No. I just want to add that, you know, I do see value for the especially for the elementary school. I do see value in having those small group lessons because, you know, just working with their friends and similar age group and talking it out, it does add to the, you know, whole richness of that learning. However, if we can just, you know, keep like a mid-October or some kind of a date where, you know, we can just kind of review again and see what's going well, what's not going well, and, you know, just kind of some feedback kind of a thing where we can hear back from parents and students and teachers, you know, what's working for them, what's not working for them. And, you know, even in terms of, you know, just doing another survey and figuring out, you know, that might be one of the ways to just kind of modify the process midway. My other question, if I can ask, is, and this is like a safety question really, if a teacher tests COVID positive, or if a student tests, actually before that, I should ask another question, which is how are the classes designed? So is it like a regular classroom, like 20 students, so 5 are in school and 15 are doing remotely, or is it like remote students are operating on their own and in-person students are operating on their, how does the class structure work?
It's a really great question. And a lot of that in the secondary, and I guess the elementary to a lesser extent, depends on the schedules and how many students are going to be scheduled into that classroom that selected to learn in person. There may be scenarios where I could definitely believe at the secondary, and those that are secondary administrators could weigh in, if they know better than I, that in the secondary, because we have so many students and so many schedules, there may be conceivably teachers who at least have 1 or 2 periods, if not more, where there are no students or a very limited number of students. And then we're left with the option, do we combine those in-person students into a different class and make this one totally remote or that one totally remote? That really depends on the individual student schedules. And we may do that. We may do that. As I envision it, if things work out the way statistically equally and we'd like them to, which probably won't be the case in all classes, we're going to have 6, 7 students in person, you know, 15 students at home, possibly. But it may come out to, well, Bernie only has 1 student in his class. So then what do? Do I move that student to another class and then give Bernie totally remote for that class? Those are the questions that we need to work out with the administrators. And actually, I would work out with the association leadership too, on how best to equitably do that. What people aren't understanding, and we're starting to see it now too, with our teacher community, a number of teachers are immunocompromised, have medical conditions that would preclude them from coming in September. So we have to deal with that. We could say, well, you have to come in, too bad. And we could say that, but it's not reality. Medical conditions and legitimate concerns we have to address by law and by ethically to treat people like the professionals they are. So we have to figure out how to do that. And I think those are some of the things that you raised, Mrs. Madiger, that we're gonna have to deal with. There will be some classes smaller than others, and maybe we combine those classes of in-person and make things totally remote so we can accommodate some of the staff members who are not able to come in due to physical conditions. That's the nuts and bolts we have to work out between, what is today? Today's the 10th, in September, you know, probably the week before school. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for our administrators.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're committed to doing the work. We're not afraid of doing the heavy lifting. But some of the concerns we have, to be candid, and nobody wants to hear the superintendent's complaints, but we're doing a lot of things. This meeting, other meetings, other work behind the scenes. And then if the governor in the last minute says it's totally remote, we all wasted our time. So it's frustrating for people, and not just me, it's for teachers. You know, normally this time of year for teachers, they're enjoying the end of the summer. They've already prepared their classrooms. They prepared everything, their schedules. They know what they're expecting when they come back to school. All of us are in this state of uncertainty. And for most people, I believe, teachers especially, who like order, and you know, that's why you know, we're in this profession where it's somewhat orderly. Every year we have the same type of thing, right? A number of students come in our class, we go through the 180 days. That right now there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's unsettling for people. So I wish I could say today we have the perfect answer that's going to meet everyone's needs. We don't. It's not out there. But you have our commitment, our staff, and I know the teachers and administrators, to do what we can to make it better and the best it can be for everyone. So I think at this point, what's important, I'm sorry, I think we need to have another forum when the schedule is out for people that may have additional questions, that we can address it. And, you know, I think maybe we set that up next week. I'll have to look at the calendars with the team and we'll do that. I'm sorry.
The reason I asked you this question, sorry, Dr. Bregan, the reason why I asked you this question, a lot of people want to know if they change from in-person to remote, or if once they move from marking period 1 to marking period 2, would the teachers be the same? Because nobody likes their teachers to be changed, you know, mid-school year. So is that something that's possible, or it's tough, or it may be possible?
I would think for the majority, again, I don't know the specifics until we see the actual, and we're working on it right now, the schedules with the students who have chosen to come in, that the vast majority are going to be the same teachers.
Okay.
But there may be some instances where it's not, to accommodate individual students as well as teacher concerns.
So one related question. Can I just
ventilation, open windows versus open doors. I saw somewhere where someone was allowing for open outside doors to get most ventilation into the schools. Now, my fear for security is there, but what do we do about like fire drills, evacuation drills, lockdown drills? Has that been taken into any of the powers that be to decide what we're doing with those?
Absolutely, and I think if I didn't emphasize it, I apologize. It was in the presentation that we're getting guidance from the Department of Ed on the security drills that we're required to do. For instance, some of the drills like active shooter drills, and if there's a lockdown drill or a bomb threat drill, sometimes doing a tabletop exercise with the administrative team satisfies those requirements. We're getting guidance. We were told there'd be further guidance coming from the Department of Ed for that. They don't necessarily want us going out on fire drills, because an example would be if we went on a fire drill, let's say we had class today, the expectation would be when the students line up to walk out the building and when they get outside the building, that they're 6 feet apart. Now, that may work in this COVID space that we're in right now, but that's not normally what we do, because that'll make it much longer to get out of a building. And they don't want students having muscle memory of staying 6 feet apart, because when this is all over, you know, we're not 6 feet apart, we're 6 inches apart. And that's how we can empty a building with 700 students in, 60 seconds. So right now, we're given direction to wait. There's going to be further guidance from the Department of Ed on school safety drills.
So there was a third part to my question, which is, so now if a teacher tests COVID positive, so then what is the protocol? Obviously, she's not going to be able to teach. And then what happens to the in-person, the children attending that classroom? What are the protocols in place for that?
Yeah, again, the protocols for anyone that tests positive would be, obviously they have to get medical treatment, and if they hopefully went through it and did not get a significant case and were well enough to come back, when they were well enough to come back, they would have to get cleared by their medical professional that they were healthy enough and no longer a threat to anyone else. For the students that they had come in contact with, whether that was a teacher or other students, the expectation would be they would do a 14-day quarantine to observe for symptoms. If they're quarantining themselves, meaning they're not coming to school anymore, they're in their homes for 14 days and they're asymptomatic and they have not experienced any symptoms of COVID-19, they would be allowed to return to school as we would now. But that's the CDC protocol, and we don't have really any exceptions to that. And we have to do the contact tracing, which we reported to the Department of the Jersey Department of Health, as well as our local health coordinator.
But what about the actual teaching? What the actual teaching? The teacher is now not able to teach, so who will be taking, doing her role?
Well, that's a question that I just want to follow up. You can answer at the same time, which is we're gonna have substitutes. All these subs trained to cover the teachers, and do they have the technology to step in when it's needed?
I would say, in answer to your question, Mrs. Madiger, we would try to secure substitutes. And we have some substitutes that are highly trained and some are going to require more training. One of the things we were looking at was getting some, if we could find them, some substitute teachers to be dedicated to elementary or secondary and kind of have them ready to go and train them. We're looking at that option right now and have them ready to go and have the skill set that they need to be successful. But you know, anyone would tell you that no matter how high caliber the substitute teacher is, they're not the same as the traditional teacher in the room. So we're going to do the best we can. There's going to be a shortage of substitutes. There's potentially going to be a shortage of teachers. And these are uncertain times. And we're just going to do what we can as best we can to make the best of it and continue to move forward.
So these substitutes, they have the devices. If they need to go in the afternoon for the afternoon sessions to do the one-on-ones and small groups?
We'll make sure they have devices, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Dr. Bregan, one of the slides that you showed said that a number of students, transportation could be dependent on the number of students who sign up for busing. So, and that could impact busing. So is there a possibility that students might not have any busing in September?
I don't think so. I think the reason that information was put there, if there's a change in transportation. So let's say we decide to take a route that's going to come down New Dover to JMP, right? Let's just say we're coming up, our last stop's on Roxy Avenue as we come through New Dover. And to keep the social distancing on that bus, we have 22 students on a bus that would traditionally have 54 students. So all of a sudden, you know, Bernie Bregan says, you know what, my 3 kids are going to come in person and they want to come to school. Well, now I just threw the monkey wrench into that whole works because that bus, to be socially distant, can only have 21 students. I don't have a bus where I can put those 3 additional students on and keep everyone safe. So that's what I mean by that. If people make their expectations in the beginning, we're going to try to honor them. And when this is over, hopefully at some point during the course of this year, this is over. I don't know that, but I hope. When we get back to some degree of normalcy, whatever that looks like, that we will be able to provide transportation for all those people that want it. The question really is we can't pivot in between because that will compromise what we're setting in place. And it's going to be hard to schedule to begin with. Yeah, I know we've gone on. Here's what I would recommend, unless everybody's opposed. We've been at it for over almost 2 hours. I think it's a lot of time. I think it's a lot of time for our parents to sit and listen to. I know there's a lot of discussion. There may be more that we have to have. I think we should agree to do this again because I think, like our students, our attention span wanders after a while. If the board agrees to that, I think we wrap up this parent forum and we agree to have another one at some point next week, and we'll post this one tomorrow, if not tonight. We'll have more opportunities for people to submit questions, and the process continues to evolve, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's totally fine. But you know, some other question you have already answered, right? And you're probably gonna get some questions between now and the next meeting. So if those questions can be posted online as FAQs, then you know we can save some time down the road. Right now, because nobody had a chance to ask a question, that's some other questions show up. So if we can do that, that will help. And I don't know if it's possible to have moderated live question asking, because I know there'll be a lot. I don't know how many people right now is watching, but I'm pretty sure in the thousands. Is it possible that they have
1,666 in the beginning?
Right now, there's
1,659.
Yeah, so it would be hard, but
yeah, okay.
Easier this way, and I thought we may even have more, but yeah, we'll do that too. We'll do that with the FAQs. We'll start working on that tonight.
So
Can
this
I
will
just
go on the
quickly bring
website,
up?
it will go on YouTube, and will it go on the television?
Patrick McDonald, do you have the answer to that question?
Yes, we will be uploading this forum to both YouTube and television.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
So I just quickly, Dr. Bregan, just one small thing I wanted to bring up, and this is very important for all the PTAs and the PTOs. So I've been contacted by some PTAs, and as we all know, the PTAs provide so much of support to our schools, and currently they're trying to kind of think outside the box. Kids are not being able to go out, play, and things like that. And so I got this question, which might be a question for all the PTOs, that if they want to do something kind of in like remote, for example, one PTO wants to buy the Scholastic login and provide it to the students, do they have to go through the board? And you don't have to really answer the question in detail right now, but I just thought that it would be a great idea for you and maybe the assistant superintendents to just kind of hold a separate kind of a Zoom forum just with them, because they need also guidance in terms of how they should operate in this remote world, just kind of providing any type of supportive services.
Thank you, Shivi. That's a great idea. Our PTOs are our greatest supporters, and we would love to set something up to maybe address their concerns to leadership from each of our 19 schools. It's a really good idea. We'll look at that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. As I said, we'll do this again. I know there's probably more questions, as people have mentioned, and we will address them all. But I do think we have a limited window of attention spans, or maybe that's just my own attention deficit issues coming through. But nonetheless, I thank everyone, and I really appreciate the input, and we're going to continue to move forward. And despite this pandemic, we're going to continue to shine bright.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.